Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Mythic Monday, and this time we got a lot to talk about with new 10.0.7 content. We'll go over changes in the healer meta, the dungeon difficulty, we'll talk about next week's Mythic Plus affixes, and we'll get into the Onyx Annulet as well as Forgotten Reach content, so let's get into it. Let's start out with the healer meta, as 10.0.7 brought some pretty drastic changes to some of the healers. Last week I predicted that there would be some changes in the high-end M Plus meta coming into the new patch. Checking out sub-creation, we do start to see some movement, and oftentimes, really drastic movement can take a couple of weeks to pan out, since just because a spec got some changes doesn't mean everyone automatically has a super geared tune, ready to push keys on that spec, or is it necessarily being played to the best of its abilities, or that the optimal builds have been figured out yet. But we can kind of take a look at the meta from week to week and get a sense of the momentum different specs have. Unsurprisingly, after a couple of nerfs, Evoker has taken a baby step back behind Resto Druid to the second spot in the S tier. Having actually played a little Evoker this week in Mythic Plus, I think the nerfs might have been a little overblown in 5-man content, as the spec honestly didn't feel a whole lot different, outside of plopping down an extra echo or two here and there. Resto Druid is feeling quite good. The new deep focus talent is nice for single target, and we're seeing more higher end druids moving away from the Protector of the Pack talent and toward Heart of the Wild. These changes, along with the new ring, had my druid doing a lot more damage than I was used to. I'd expect druid to remain in this top S spot for the remainder of the patch. It just has a great kit for Mythic Plus, tons of healing throughput, and now it seems like the damage is really starting to ramp up to a little bit closer to what we saw earlier in the patch. Also trending upward, we see Resto Shaman climbing to the front of the A tier, and for good reason. Buffs and new talents supporting Chain Heal make the spec feel really good, and despite the nerf to Acid Rain, Shaman still feels like a pretty hard-hitting class from a damage perspective, and now feels a lot less clunky from a healing perspective in my opinion. I had a ton of fun on the Shami this week, and they feel like such a great pug healer with the amount of kicks and stops you can put out. Given these changes, I expect to see Shaman continue to climb in the weeks to come and challenge Evoker and Druid for a spot in the S tier. Now we have two surprises, a good one and maybe a not so good one. First off, it's Paladin moving up to mid-A tier after several weeks toward the bottom. Paladin got quite a few buffs to various abilities for damage and healing, and it's good to see them making their way up the ranks once again, passing my sadly untouched Disc Priest. And I guess it's only been a week, but I was hoping to see a little bit more movement from Monk given the buffs that were coming their way. Seeing them still stuck down at the bottom with Holy Priest is a little depressing, so hopefully it's just that people are still getting their monks geared up and ready to crush some higher keys. It's also unfortunately possible that it's going to take some time to heal the poor community perception around the spec, given that it's been down for so long in Mythic Plus. I'm still banking on Monk to make some moves in higher keys as the weeks go by. I also still kind of maintain that Holy Priest is not really a bad spec, it just suffers from the fact that Disc is probably a little bit better, and Priest players are much more likely to just migrate toward the spec that's going to perform better in dungeons, but I don't think that Holy Priest is necessarily the worst healer of the bunch, or even if it is, I don't think that it's too far behind anything else. Looking at dungeon difficulty on a fort week, really only had one semi-surprise to me, and that's seeing Azure Vault in the A tier, which is a little bit new. I think we have the popularity of the Whelp skip to thank for that, but I'd still be cautioned about using this in keys where you aren't confident in your group's ability to CC mobs and blow them up. Outside of that, I think we're pretty well established with which dungeons are easier on which weeks at this point. Next week's affixes are Tyrannical, Sanguine, Explosive, Thundering, which I feel should be a pretty decent week to push for Tyrannical keys. Make sure you've got a couple of specs in your party that are capable of moving mobs out of Sanguine, and don't forget to spec into those knockbacks wherever possible yourselves. Tanks need to keep those mobs moving when they get low, and have a plan for those pesky mobs that love to bathe in Sanguine and hard cast abilities that can't be interrupted. Explosive is a bit of a touchy subject when it comes to us healers, I know, as we're usually expected to do the bulk of the work when it comes to this pesky affix. I'm going to link a weak aura in the description that I stole from Quasi and he stole from someone else that is really helpful. Basically what it does is when you press it, it will hide all the nameplates on your screen except for the explosives, which is great for when your screen is crowded with nameplates and you're having a hard time getting your mouse over one. It's bound to left control by default, but you can change it to whatever key you like in the custom options. Check it out, you might find it helpful. As a healer, I just find Explosive Week really tedious because it takes away GCDs usually used for doing fun things like damage or using your utility, and instead becomes this very tedious feeling that all you do is pop orbs all run long. But it's not exactly hard, so it does usually allow for some pretty good opportunities to push keys. It's just always an affix I'm really glad to see go when it's over with. Finally, the random thought of the week, which tend to be not that random when there's actually things to talk about. Let's talk about the Annulet and the Forbidden Shore. All things considered, I feel like this is a pretty impressive mid-season patch with quite a lot to do, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit since it dropped on Tuesday. I've been having fun running a full DPS ring on my Resto Druid and Resto Shaman this week, and the ring actually contributes quite a bit of damage on those characters. The vaults are also a fun little novelty system as well. Kind of reminds me of Legend of Zelda style puzzles where you find something and you're not quite sure what to do with it until you see something later, and then a little light bulb goes off making you think, oh man, I gotta go back and grab that thing I saw for this room. I'm just a sucker for stuff like that. I've been running Freezing Ice Stone, Prophetic Twilight Stone, and Desirous Bloodstone on my Shaman, and Humming Arcane Stone, Prophetic Twilight Stone, and Desirous Bloodstone on my Druid just to mess around, and both combinations seem quite good so far. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed on how to attain gems, it's really easy. The main idea is just use your initial keys, open doors, get some gems. If you don't like the gems you got, go to the anvil and smash them. Use that currency to buy new gems until you get the ones you want. If you're out of keys, go kill rares and open chests to get more, rinse, repeat, and then you can farm some more of the currency to do work orders for unstable elementium to upgrade your stones. 2 or 3 hours, you can easily have all the stones you want maxed out. In the process, you'll also get some buying on account gear you can send over to an alt in need as well, which is a nice little bonus for going out and killing rares to get more keys. And if you have max level alts that you don't care about getting the ring on, you can use the skip to get your initial 7 keys and then send them to your main to expedite the whole process as well. All in all, I'd say 10.0.7 is a pretty impressive mid-season patch given the balance changes and the new content to explore, and I think it's going to help hold us over until 10.1 hits. Pretty huge difference from the massive content droughts we saw throughout Shadowlands, and I'm definitely behind it if this is the direction Blizzard is taking their patches. So as always, I love to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you guys think of the balance changes that came to healers? Did they play out the way that you expected them to? Any thoughts on the dungeon difficulty or next week's affixes, as well as what are your feelings about the Onyx Annulet ring, the Forbidden Reach? You having fun with it? Think it's a waste of time? Always love to hear from you guys. And if you made it this far, please thumb up the video, subscribe to see more of my content in the future. Really helps me out. And finally, you can always check out my live stream right here on YouTube. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 9 p.m. Pacific. We're healing keys all night long. We have lots of fun. Love to see you there. And until next time, happy healing.